What is this one? And submitting information, full name. Well, it's right. Alison Dawes.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, ma'am.
All right, let's quickly finish the remaining portion of the SPL guide so that we are good to go, and then we can pick up a question paper and solve it, right? So that you all will get a hang over it. So just sharing my screen in a bit. All right. Quick check, guys. Audible, visible, and the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So we did the risk did we do the risk assessment yesterday?
Yeah.
That's taken care of. So, and then there was external analysis and marketing management. We have to start with internal analysis, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with capabilities. What do you understand by capabilities quickly?
Core competencies, resources, all form part of capabilities.
Resources are your capabilities are two things, resources and competencies, right? Then resources, when you have the basic resources that are easy to copy, those will be known as your basic resources. And if you have any other resources that are difficult to copy, that are robust, they'll be your unique resources, right? In our routine sessions, we've taken examples wherein, if you want to start a newspaper business, right? The basic resource that you will need is paper. You will need journalists. You will need ink. You will need printers. So these are the basic resources that will be found that'll be found everywhere across, right? Whoever owns a newspaper business. However, if you want to have a resource that is not commonly found, right? For example, Times of India has a contract with Twinkle Khanna. So she has an editorial column of her own in Times of India. So they have that kind of a contract. Now, Twinkle Khanna does not give her articles in any other newspaper apart from Times of India. So Twinkle Khanna becomes a unique resource for Times of India. Oh, is my voice breaking, guys?
No, ma'am, it's perfectly clear.
Darren, please check the internet at your end. Might be a problem. Okay. Then we have competencies, right? Competencies are basically, we took the example of, let's say when I want to start a mobile business, right? The basic competency, which is known as a threshold competency that we need, is electrical engineering. So that is needed. And if, let's say, I develop a cell phone that has a very good user interface, that has very good navigation, etc., then that becomes my core competency, which is not usually found, and it is unique to my organization, right? So is that clear? Capabilities?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Then resources we just spoke about. What are critical success factors, and could you give me some examples?
Critical success factors are those factors which are critical to success of the organization. Means like an organization might have many objectives for it to accomplish, but some of its objectives are extremely important that it achieves. So these could be the critical success factors. An example would be, in the case of a restaurant, the quality of a food could be a critical success factor, or it could also be a review from like we have these Michelin reviews, right? So achieving those Michelin reviews could also be a critical success factor. So those could be a critical, and KPIs are basically help to measure the critical success factors. They are mostly quantitative in nature. And they actually help us to indicate how much of the critical success factors we have achieved, or how well we are going about the critical success factors.
Could you tell me a KPI of your example? Like when you said quality of food is a critical success factor in case of a restaurant, what will be the KPI to measure that?
It could be a review from the customer based on a stars rating. Out of how many customers have 5 stars, 4 stars, and so on. They could actually ask about a review, or the number of customers who actually come back after that data can actually be recorded and measured as a KPI. So the more customers are coming back, it means that the customers are enjoying the food, and that means the company is achieving its critical success factors.
Perfect, perfect. Very good example. Nicely explained, right? And from the critical success factors and the KPIs, we have the balanced scorecard model, right? Do you all know the balanced scorecard model? All right, Priyanka, would you want to elaborate on that? Quickly, a quick review of balanced scorecard.
It's the 4 perspectives, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
The financial perspective, internal business process perspective, customer perspective, and the other one, innovation perspective.
So what exactly do we do?
The financial perspective is to see if we are well within the budget and if our costs and our expenses are all in place, and if we are economic and efficient and effective. And the innovation perspective is to see if we are in competition with all our, we are in trend and we know what we need to do and how to develop our product in order to meet the customer needs, and to be in to make changes with the current scenario, trends, and lifestyles of your customers. And customer perspective is to see if we are giving the utmost satisfactory service to them, and they've been their expectations have been met, and they are happy with your product or your service. And then the internal business process perspective is to see the satisfaction of your employees, your managers within the organization. So if they are happy with their working conditions, their job role, their job security, and their environment as a whole.
Good, good. Thanks, Priyanka. So yeah, basically earlier we used to analyze the organizations only from financial point of view, but take the example of Nokia. Nokia was financially doing so well earlier on, but now it's nowhere to be seen, right? So any organization who is performing well today, there's no guarantee that it will perform well tomorrow as well. So there is a need to take into account more things apart from just the financial analysis. So financial perspective is just one aspect of it. We also take into account 3 other aspects to measure the performance of any organization, right? So when you have to measure the performance of any organization, you can use the balanced scorecard method. You can use the Baldrige performance excellence method. You can use the critical success factors and KPIs also, right? These are the areas that you can work on if you're asked about analyzing an organization's performance. Then
I thought it was actually a ratio analysis which you use to analyze performance.
Yes, but ratio analysis will only do your financial analysis, right?
Yeah. So, okay, financial analysis.
In financial analysis, you can further do ratio analysis.
Okay, ma'am.
Right. Then we have product life cycle. Okay. Yeah. Then we have product life cycle. We have big data and knowledge management. Big data, I think we did one slide also. So big data is basically volumes of data that can be analyzed. There can be a trend analysis, etc., done on that data to take out useful, interpretations about our customers from that data. Right? So that is there. Knowledge management is knowledge sharing. Then we have...
Could you talk about knowledge management a bit more? Like what do we actually write using more knowledge management as internal analysis?
Knowledge management is basically whatever is gained by the employees in the course of their relationship with the organization, that is shared amongst all. Knowledge sharing is knowledge management, right? So that all the employees learn from each other and avoid making the same mistakes that other people are making. That saves on the time and increases the efficiency.
Is it same like talent management also? Basically, it's related.
Yeah, I mean, talent management is more to do with HR. That is, you know, you have to get the right people for the right job, more of that sort. Here, we are talking about more, you know, intellectual point of view. That is, whatever knowledge we are building, it's not in individual perspective. The organization is building up knowledge together as a whole. So, you know, there's no individual learning. Everybody is learning from each other, and we are building up knowledge as a whole in the organization.
Okay, so then that will be a core competency for the organization. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Product life cycle is same as industry life cycle. No, product life cycle is about a particular product, right? So the stages that it goes through, the 4 stages, that is product life cycle. What kind of questions can be asked around knowledge management? So no direct question will be asked around knowledge management as to what is knowledge management, etc. What can happen is you'll be given a case, and there, if you know, you can figure out that the knowledge management is done properly, or it's not done properly, then you can start commenting about it and use technical words like knowledge management. That is the extent of knowledge management that is usually examined, right? And you know, when you're writing about the benefits of big data, or let's say the benefits of technology in the organization, that time you can talk about knowledge management. That knowledge sharing and knowledge management becomes easier with the help of, or when you're talking about cloud technology, again, with the help of cloud technology, since information will be accessible to multiple people at the same time, knowledge management becomes easy. So usually it will be used in application, you know, or benefits of certain types of technology. No direct question will come up from knowledge management, right? I hope that answers your question. Okay, how is knowledge management in relation with big data? It's in relation with big data analytics, right? So once you have analyzed the big data is basically what? Lots of data that you're going to organize and analyze for your particular organization. Once you have analyzed that, that becomes a useful resource for your organization, because you can pick up a lot of things. Now that you can share across the organization, and that knowledge can be managed in a proper manner. So again, knowledge management can come handy when you're talking about big data analytics as well. Right? Okay, I hope I've not missed out any question. If I've missed out any question, please copy paste it, because there were a lot of questions. If I've missed out anything, please put it up again. Okay. Then we have cloud and mobile technology. So cloud, I don't think I need to explain. We all are using clouds day in and day out, right? So we created the Google Drive link also. Even that is knowledge management. We are sharing knowledge, and I'm putting it up on the cloud, which is easily accessible by you all, right? Multiple benefits of cloud sharing, right? The storage issues are resolved. Multiple access, multiple people can access and work on that on the same time. Like right now, I've not given you the editor access to the drive. I've only given you the viewer access. But if I give you the editor access to the drive, then you all can also add documents, delete documents, etc. So those are multiple benefits of cloud, right? Yes, better workforce collaboration, definitely. Then innovation and disruption. What is disruptive technology? Anyone? What is disruptive technology?
It is a technology that disrupts the entire industry and changes the market leaders as a whole. Um, like these technology has the potential to completely redefine the industry. And if these technology are not taken seriously or followed, then it could mean that the current industry would be obsolete and would be washed out of the market.
Which completely disrupts the existing technology, is a disruptive technology, right? Can we talk about some examples here?
Fintech is a disruptive technology.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchain could be a disruptive technology.
Yes, people are saying Uber. Yes, Uber is even cryptocurrency. Yes. Travel agencies, Amazon, Urban Club. Yes. So these are basically anything. Yes, Zomato, Swiggy, all these are anything that disrupts the existing technology will be a disruptive technology. Perfect. Right. Then we have the BCG matrix. What do we understand? What is firstly BCG matrix used for? Good. Product positioning, product portfolio. Good, good. Understanding the market share and growth, checking the stage of the product in the market or industry. Perfect. So basically, you use it in a product portfolio to understand where your product is and should you be producing more or less of that product to able to understand what to do with your products. So that is the BCG matrix. Do I need to explain this or shall we move forward? All right. Then we have value chain analysis. Again, we have two sets of activities that add value to our product. Quickly, can you tell me the two sets of activities? Primary and support, right? What are the primary activities? There are 5 primary activities. Inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing, and sales, right? That will be your after sales. Perfect. What are going to be your support services, HR, procurement, tech, infrastructure? Perfect, perfect. Perfect, guys. You remember this. So we are moving forward. Then we have generic strategies. So, there are 3 generic strategies that you can pick up. You can choose to be a cost leader. You can choose to differentiate your product, or you can choose the focus strategy, right? We know this. I'm moving forward. Guys, I'm just telling you the keywords and moving forward. If at any point in time you want me to elaborate on anything, please let me know. Then we have the strategic clock, right? Again, Isha, you will not be able to use the clock directly, right? So it is just a model that helps you to understand which kind of a strategy will be successful and what will fail, right? So I don't think you will ever be able to draw a clock in the exam. Such questions are not asked. It's just for you to understand what strategy will succeed, what will be a failure. And depending on the case, if you're able to use the keywords like hybrid or focus strategy or focus differentiation, that is the extent of it. That is how you'll be able to use it. Again, guys, see, don't don't think that you will be able to use whatever you are studying directly in your answer, right? It's not like they will ask you questions on the models. You know the paper pattern now, you have a case study. Now it is your skill and talent as to how you apply your knowledge in that case study. So when you see anything related to strategy, you think about all these models and see what fits in that, right? How you will be able to apply strategy clock? Not directly, you will not be able to apply capabilities model or critical success factor or anything for that matter. You will not be able to apply the 7 P's of marketing or anything directly, right? In some cases, like for example, pestle, you might be able to apply when you have good enough knowledge about the environment. But these are very, numbered models that you can actually think that comes straight to your mind when you think about, when you read the question. The others, you have to really think about the technical words that you can pick up from those models and use whatever is relevant for your answers. Okay, so don't think in that direction, right? Don't think in that direction as to where I'll apply this. Different models. I see when you're reading the question, see what the question is talking about, and if there are any parts of the models that you can use, right? Okay, I have a few questions in the chat box. I'll quickly answer those. Said is asking, ma'am, when is generic strategies required to be used in the answer? Again, can't really point that out, but you can, when in the case, you can see that the company is selling the product at a premium, etc. That time you can mention in the passing that the company is following a differentiation strategy, etc. Right? Direct application, please do not expect. Isha, so can I use generic then because I do not understand this clock? Yes, it's completely fine. Ma'am, the last 3 stages of the clock 6, 7, 8, can you elaborate on that? The last 3 stages are in which the clock, I mean, the strategy will fail, right? It's mainly because you are charging a higher price and the benefits that are received by the customers are low. See, if Apple currently is selling its mobile phone, they are following a differentiation strategy where the price is high, but the perceived benefit from that service is also high. That is why that strategy is a success in the market and they are following the differentiation model. But just take this example. If Oppo today or Vivo smartphone, if they start charging 1 lakh rupees for their smartphones, are you going to pay that amount for their smartphones? Yes or no? Nimisha? No, right? Because the perceived benefit from that product is very low and you will not be willing to pay that price. So where the price is high and the perceived benefits are low, your strategy will fail. Nobody will buy from you, right? Nimisha, is that clear? Yes, Isha, perfectly fine. Okay, great. Okay, Nimisha is asking, ma'am, I've noticed that answers use few lines from each models when explaining the answers, like in bits. We have to do that too. If you can do it, it'll be great. And that is what I am emphasizing on, guys. The major problem that I am understanding from your approach, from the kind of questions that I'm getting is, you are thinking that the paper will be such where you will be able to use the models as it is in your answers. Let me burst that bubble for you. That is not going to happen. Except for 1 or 2, if you are lucky, you will be able to use 1 or 2 models, like I said, pestle or SWOT maybe directly. But apart from that, you have to pick up the bits and pieces from the models that you have studied, that you think are relevant, and then apply that in your answer. Please do not expect that you read it and you apply it. That is not going to happen. So Nimisha, to answer your question, if you can do it, if you can pick up bits and pieces of the models that are relevant to your answer, nothing like that. That is the expectation altogether. Right? Perfect. Then we have the corporate culture web. In this, you would have studied about the artifacts. So this is given very nicely in your technical articles. Whoever is facing problems in the cultural web, I think it is the first technical article that is there. You should read it. It is linked with your Sheen's determinants also. Both of them are very nicely linked, and that will help you get a better hang over it. Then we have the benchmarking model. We have 3 types of benchmarking: internal, competitive, and best in class, right?
Ma'am, do we have to actually learn the theory of benchmarking process, like how benchmarking is actually done to apply this model, or do we just talk about in the question about the actual benchmarking process, like they can actually use this data to benchmark with their competitors, or their internal benchmarking can be done, or we do the benchmark by ourselves in this benchmarking related?
Your question is not clear, Ramakrishnan. Could you tell me
do we have to actually learn like the theory of how to do benchmarking? Like first you have to identify the process which you want to benchmark. Second, you have to find the person to compare with. Third, you have to set the criteria for benchmark. Like that, all these is not required, right?
Not required. Just need to know the different types of benchmarking, the benefits of benchmarking, and how to do the variance analysis that is from the benchmark, that is your standard. If you've not met the standard, why have you not met the standard? The reasons for the difference, that is known as variance analysis, that becomes important. But the process of benchmarking as such is not very important.
Okay.
Okay, one more question. Not able to understand the difference between focus and cost leadership. See, I'll just explain with the help of an example. In the mobile industry, Vivo, Oppo, okay, all these are following cost leadership, where they are trying to keep their costs as low as possible and play in numbers. So they want to sell huge quantity of mobile phones so that their revenue increases. They are not, their target is not the price, their target is the quantity. Increase in quantity will lead to increase in revenue. That is cost leadership. Differentiation is when you're concentrating on the price. You're increasing the price, obviously because of the law of demand. When you increase the price, the quantity will come down, but you are focusing on the price. Increase in price will lead to increase in revenue. That is your differentiation strategy. Now, in the mobile industry only, there was this one company. They identified that either we have, a high-end brand, a differentiated brand like Apple, who are, who are selling their mobile phones for 1 lakh rupees and so, or else we have companies like Samsung, Oppo, Vivo, who are not going beyond 20,000. So they identified that this market, that is 20,000 to 80,000, 90,000 market, is unexplored. And they ventured into this market. I hope you know which brand I'm talking about. Any idea?
OnePlus?
OnePlus, yes. They launched their mobile phones usually around 80,000, 70, 80,000. And then as the model goes older, it comes down, right? So they are using a focus strategy, where if you understand, they are not exactly doing a cost leadership style. Their costs are not very low, and it's not differentiation also, where they are charging an extra premium. Their focus is on a particular segment of the market which they think is unexplored. So this is a focus strategy. I hope that's clear. Perfect. Then we did benchmarking. Then we have the Baldrige model. There are 7 things that you need to take care of if you want your organization to excel, right? So quickly, the 7 areas that you need to focus on for performance excellence.
First, we look at the organizational profile. That is the external, internal environment, and actually the position of the organization. And then we next thing is the leadership. After that, leaders would look at understand the organization profile, and then they would create a strategy. That's the strategic planning. And that strategy would have 3 focuses. That is customer focus, operations focus, and customer focus, operation focus, and there's one more.
Workforce focus.
What focus?
Workforce.
Okay. And then finally, workforce. Yeah, workforce. And then finally, you have the result, and then you are analyzing the result using analysis, data analysis, and then you are actually feeding back the results to the leadership again, and then the cycle starts. Is that how this goes?
Yeah, that's how it goes. You explained so properly, and then why that question in the end?
I'm not sure completely if I understood it or not.
Okay, so perfectly fine. Nimisha, are you talking about models in general, or you're talking about the Baldrige model? Okay. This is how it is, but I mean, there's only one way of studying this model. Where all do you focus on, when you want your organization to excel? Okay, so, okay, I will explain it again. Basically, Baldrige model talks about the areas that you have to focus on for your organization to excel, for performance excellence. And those are the 7 areas. It's very easy. Your leadership should be perfectly fine. Your strategy should be in place. You should focus on your workforce, should focus, on the customer, right? So these are the 7 areas that you need to focus on if you want your organization to succeed, right? It's as plain and simple as that. There's nothing complicated in the Baldrige model, and the process keeps on going. Right? Okay. I think I picked up all the questions, but if in case, again, the questions were flooding in the chat box, if in case I have missed out on any question, please copy paste. Types of benchmarking: internal, competitive, and best-in-class benchmarking. Right? Okay. Then we have financial analysis, very important, guys. We spoke about it on the first class also. That is the quantitative analysis, very, very important. Short-term and long-term analysis, budgeting, variance analysis becomes important. Now, variance analysis is generally done for what you have decided, like what you've budgeted and what actually happens. Why is there a difference between the two? That analysis is variance analysis. You can also be required to do an analysis as to why is there a difference between the last year figures and the current year figures. What has changed? Okay, why the sales have gone down? Why have the profits gone up more than the industry trends, etc.? So this becomes very, very important. You need to do the ratio analysis to understand the exact variance, and along with that, give reasons also from the text. That will give you the qualitative reasons from the text to substantiate your answers as to why revenue has gone up, down, profit has gone up, down, etc. Investment appraisals, right? You'll be given different strategies, you'll be given different investment proposals, which strategy to take up, that you'll do a cost benefit analysis. You can use your knowledge from the FM also, that is, you can do the NPV analysis, from the financial perspective, and try and figure out which strategy will be better. Tax implications, obviously, simple examples like if you raise money from debt, right, you will get a tax shield. The interest is tax deductible, right? So you will get a tax shield. But if you raise money from equity, you do not have any sort of a tax shield, and the entire profit is taxable. So that is there. And then ratio analysis we spoke about in detail. I hope you know the ratios that you should try and use in your answers. The basic ratios that we discussed: gross profit, net profit, operating profit, right? Return on capital investment. Then we had gearing ratio, debt to equity ratio, etc.
Even the investor ratios are important. Do you have to remember completely the dividend payout and all these kind of PE ratio, earnings per share, and earnings per share is simple, but that all these investor ratios is also necessary?
Earnings per share, I would say you should know. But apart from that, just the basic ones, like you should know the formula for sure, that in case if any specific information is given, if you use that formula, it's going to be nice. But generally it's not there, the information. But then, sometimes they give you specific information about inventory because they want you to focus more on inventory. So then if you know the inventory holding days, the inventory turnover ratio, then it just helps, your answer better.
Okay, ma'am.
Right. So some basic you have to know, and if you can go a little beyond, it can help you. Like I can't say for sure, but if they give you some specific information, let's say if they give you some specific information about debtors or creditors, then debtors turnover ratio, payable days, that, comes handy. So that you can use. Then we have costing. Again, setting the cost of your product. Again, this comes from your costing and FM. Nothing in detail, you don't have to worry a lot about it. If you've done your basic FM in your F level, all these should be very easy. Right, then we are going to do the SWOT analysis quickly. You all know the SWOT analysis, you've been doing it for a very long time. I'm not going to focus on that, right? Then we spoke about the SAF model, that is whenever the question talks about two different strategies or talks about whether you should acquire a company or not, it basically talks about taking a decision, a strategic decision about the company. My strongest recommendation would be to use the SAF model. It's the best model that fits in almost all circumstances: suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. Right, we've done this, so I'm not again explaining what these are. If there are any specific doubts, you can ask. Then,
ma'am, the generic strategy is actually used in this scenario, right? Strategic choice. More than understanding the internal capabilities, we actually use the generic scenario to find out which direction the company should actually invest in or which market the company should actually try for. So we can actually use the generic strategies in the choice related section also, right?
So as in which strategy to choose?
Yeah, if the company is not a cost leader or one of the generic strategies, so then we can actually say that the company should actually try to be one of the generic strategy, try to be one of the strategy leader or cost leader or differentiator, something. So that is actually a strategic choice, right? More than an internal analysis.
Yes. When you establish the organization, that is a strategic choice. Obviously, depending upon the product that you're offering, you have to be in sync with the environment. See, if I want to be a cost differentiator, it's not just my call, right? It depends on the demand also of the product. It depends on a lot of external factors. So it has to do a lot with the analytics part of it also, right? So that is there. But yes, it is a choice eventually if you want to sell a premium product or if you want to sell a product that is, you know, a no frills product at a lower price.
Okay, ma'am.
Then we have, you know, the growth strategies, right? There are two types of growth: organic, inorganic growth. Organic growth is when you want to grow on your own without any external help. That is organic growth. And for organic growth, you use the Ansov's matrix, right? That is market penetration, new product or product development, market development, or diversification. These are the four strategies that are generally used when you want to grow organically. Then there are types of inorganic growth also, where you take external help, like you enter into a joint venture or licensing or franchisee, any of these, acquisition, merger, etc. These are methods of inorganic growth, right? Any questions on Ansov's matrix or growth in general?
Ma'am, related to diversification, can you just like talk about the under diversification? We have horizontal, vertical, some kind of diversification we have. No? Can you just brush up on the diversification part?
See, when, let's say I am in the electronics industry, I am manufacturing, let's say mobile phones. No, let's say I'm manufacturing TV. And I start manufacturing geysers and fridge, etc. also. That is your horizontal diversification when you remain in the same industry. Then we have the vertical diversification. So this is where you are, let's say, okay. And Acha, do you remember the distribution chain that you would have studied, right? That there is a manufacturer, then you have the wholesaler, then you have a retailer, and then you have the consumer, right? Now, if I am the manufacturer and I acquire the retailer, right? So I acquire the retailer, I am moving forward. See, whenever, the trick to remember this is, if you're moving closer to the consumer, you're moving forward. So it's known as forward vertical integration. And if, let's say, the retailer is acquiring the manufacturer, he is moving away from the consumer, that is known as a backward vertical integration.
Got it.
Is that okay? Great. So this was about your growth. And I think now we are at the end of the revision from the text at least. So this is about the project management. Now this is one chapter which is a little aloof than your other chapters. Now this chapter talks about when you launch a particular project, okay? So in the organization, you're launching a project to see whether that project is a success or a failure. And depending on that, you're going to, take your next course of actions. So it is, it can be a pilot project. For example, if let's say I want to launch a new course, it's a new project that I want to start. I will first, let's say, start with one particular college, see the response, what is happening, etc., and then take it forward. So that is basically your project management, right? Now, you all know all these areas, the project defined, what are the constraints of the project. And Nimisha is asking, what all are we required to focus in project management? Again, it will be a case-based scenario. What is generally asked is, what are the problems? What are the constraints in the project? Okay, so what are the problems that currently are there in the project? and how can you improve those problems? What are the solutions of that problem? So this is the most common type of question that is asked under project management. Right, I hope you all know all these keywords. Is there anything that you want me to explain from here? Okay. Then we have the structure. Structure is collaborative working, like working as a team. Then we have the Harmon's matrix. Do you remember what Harmon's matrix is about? PID, Isha, is a product initiation document. What are you going to do in the project, etc.? That is PID.
Ma'am, I found the contents of business case and PID quite similar.
Not really, and that is not even your focus area. Like nobody is going to ask you about the contents on PID and business case. So don't worry about it.
Ma'am, there was a question in which they asked me to prepare a business case for the following dash question. So how to pursue that question?
Just talk about the contents of the business case. That is, whatever contents you've read, you have to just apply that to the case that is given to you.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
But it's not a frequent question. Like they would have given, yes, there will be questions they would have given for preparation, but in the exam, they don't generally ask.
So it's not a popular area?
Yeah, drafting a business case is not a popular area. Project management is popular. Drafting a business case is not really popular.
Please, ma'am, can you repeat then what are we supposed to focus on this topic, project management, key areas?
Yeah, the key areas would be you'll be given a case study. You have to identify what are the ongoing problems with the project.
Okay.
Right? And what will be your suggestions to improve the project, right? You would have heard about techniques like crashing the unnecessary activities,
okay.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Those are more important in this.
Okay, ma'am.
Great. Then we have the Harmon's process. Yes, so people have answered about it. It is about complexity and importance. Okay, so you guys do remember this, right? Which areas? So this is basically to redesign your business processes, right? Which processes should you automate? Which processes should you improve? So that is about the Harmon's matrix, right? SSC, guys, do you guys remember? I can't think of, I don't remember. I'll have to check about the SSC model. Nothing comes to my mind when I read this. I'll have to check. You guys also check in the text, like this is prepared long back. So there might be one model that we are missing out. Apparently not important, because if it was important, we would remember. So not anything to worry about, but we'll just check. Right? Then we have outsourcing, right? This comes from Harmon's model only. That is, which processes should you outsource? That is, the processes which are not strategically important, right? But are complex, like your payroll process. Payroll is a complex process. You have to take care of TDS, you have to take care of the other laws and regulations and so many employees, etc. It is complex, but strategically not important, so you can outsource it. Business process redesign is again redesigning your existing processes, right? Collaborative working is working together as a team.
Is it like matrix organizations, like matrix work environment?
What are you talking about?
Collaborative working, is it the matrix thing which you're talking about here?
No, it just means that working as a team together. So it can be about knowledge management also that we spoke about before, right? So everybody working together as a team and not individually. That is collaborative working. Right? And change, this was towards the end, like the end of the chapters. That is, you can bring in whatever change you want in the organization, but for it to be a successful change, you have to take care of a few things, right? So first we read about the contextual features of leadership. That is, leadership is contextual in nature. There is no best style of leadership. Then we spoke about the puppet model. That is, if you want to bring about a successful change in the organization, you have to take care of the people, the organization, the process, and the IT. So, IT was added later on. Earlier, it was known as the POP model. But because of the growing importance of IT in our everyday life, IT was added to this model. That is, if you want to bring in a successful change, these are the areas that you need to take care of to be able to incorporate that change successfully. Right? Then we have resistance. Obviously, people are always resistant to change. Nobody wants change. So you have to have the right kind of leadership to be able to bring out that change in the organization. Then these are two models. Do you remember these two models, guys?
Levins is unfreeze, change and refreeze. And Belgium and Hope, others I don't completely remember.
Haley model, do you remember? No?
Is it the capability, readiness to change, and those 8 factors? There's some 8 factors to organization changes. Are those 8 contexts?
Not that. You would have read revolution, evolution, transformation.
The one matrix, right? Based on the scope of change and nature of change. That is the Belgium and Hope Haley model. Okay.
Yes. Right? Extent of change that we did in that. So that is the Haley model. Right? So with this, we are pretty much done with the 24 chapters revision. We will quickly, I will just show you the models, guys. If you think there is any model that you want me to explain, although it's covered only, we have done all of these. But if you feel there's anything that you want more details on, quickly read through the models, tell me if there's anything. And while you're reading, I want you all to read the keywords, okay, so that this starts fitting in your head. So whenever you read environment in the case, pestle and 5 forces should come to your mind. Whenever you read competition, the first thing that comes to your mind is 5 forces. Can I use 5 forces in this answer? Performance, we have Baldrige, we have balanced scorecard. So while you're reading, your emphasis right now has to be on the keyword and the model, okay? And see if that makes complete sense, okay? And if there are any questions, anything that you want me to explain, please let me know. I'm scrolling up. I hope these are done.
Ma'am, discussion of the supply chain. After I know value chains. When we discuss the supply chain, what do you actually talk about? Do you talk about the just in time, or how scarce are the resources, or like?
Supply chain basically is the node to node development of a product, that is from the beginning to the end. That is your supply chain. That is from the time you enter into negotiations with the supplier from whom you're getting your raw material, from that process of developing the product till the end where you sell the product, you obtain the feedback. That entire thing is supply chain. I think a lot of people confuse it with, supply chain is only, after selling the product, that is supplying the product, but not really. It is node to node development of the product.
Okay, ma'am.
Please read these also quickly. Syed, that is exactly what we are going to do now. That is the plan. Nimisha is asking, how is the discussion of supply chain different from value chain? See, the content more or less remains the same, but the purpose for which it is used is different, right? Value chain analysis talks about all the different activities that add value to a particular product. That is the concept of value chain. Supply chain is what are the stages that a product undergoes throughout its supply chain. That is from the time it is started, it is put into production. What are the different stages of supply that it has to go through before it reaches the consumer? More or less, the content remains the same, but the concept is different. I hope you understand that. Can you talk about the risk heat map? See, risk heat map is more or less your Tara model. Instead of putting it in a matrix, if you put it on a map or a graph, it becomes a heat map. So you don't have to put it in a particular box. You can just, put it on the map, plot it on the graph. That becomes the risk heat map. Syed, is that clear? Okay. See, it used to be, it has been asked in the paper-based exam because you could draw the heat map. But yeah, now because you cannot draw the heat map, you can still be asked about the matrix. So you have to be prepared for that whatsoever. ERM is enterprise risk management. Where do we use ERM? That is, it is basically a strategy. It is your risk management strategy only, no? That you use. So when you need to find out what are the risks that you're facing, identify those risks, assess those risks. So if the question is about risk, you can more or less use the ERM.
Ma'am, under corporate governance arrangements, this family and code. Family means like, is the business a family dominated business or so on, right? It's related to that theory. And code means, is it rule based or principle based? Is that the code which you're talking about?
Yes, which framework it's operating in, and yes, whether it's a principle based or rule based approach.
Okay.
No, Nimisha, not that important. Which committees, Kristen? Yes, Darren, it could be that. That's why I said the framework, right? So local rules or international framework, whatever, wherever it's operating in. No, it's not unique to every company. It is a uniform code of ethics that is there for all the companies. Of course, you can have your own code of ethics, your policy. The HR policy can be different, but prima facie, they are the same. All right, all done, guys. Any questions in these models or any model that we've missed out and you want to talk about? When to use Poppet? Whenever you want to bring about a change in the organization and for efficient change management, right? You will use the Poppet model. That is, you have to bring about that change in the people, in the organization, in the process. So whenever it talks about effective change management in the question, you can use the Poppet model.
Could you just talk about EMAS and GRI and ISAs? I mean, ISOs.
So these are just international standards that kind of guide you as to how to, undertake the activities in a way that it doesn't harm the environment. It talks about these standards, the standards that you should match in order to have a sustainable organization and impact the environment at the least.
We have to learn these standards and other rules of how to carry the EMAS audit and so on, like EMAS process and so on. There's a process, right, for EMAS, and do we have to like learn that, or just mentioning them is enough?
Mentioning them is enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Kristen wants the last slide for a second. Just a second. This one. Okay, Alison wants me to elaborate a little on benchmarking. She missed that point. Can anyone please elaborate on benchmarking for me? Darren, what exactly are you talking about?
Ma'am, I was actually referring to the point, I'm not sure his name, EMAS, GRI, I was referring to that. They are environmental initiatives, but they are voluntary, not mandatory for a company.
Yes, because it is not, as of now, we don't have integrated reporting. We don't have to comment or report on the carbon footprint. But so that is why they are standards, right? If they were mandatory, they would be laws. So that's why they are standards that the companies are, supposed to, or they are at least guided towards fulfilling. But yes, they are not mandatory. Sure.
Okay, ma'am.
Darren, can you speak about benchmarking for Alison, please? Anybody for that matter who remembers benchmarking and the types of benchmarking, guys?
Benchmarking is the process of comparing results or processes. You can use your data and your performance and compare it with compare it with benchmarks. These benchmarks could be your competitors, your previous results, or your internal departments, or your subsidiaries themselves, or they could also be the best in the industries. So these are the types of benchmarking. So in simplest sense, benchmarking is just comparing performance and finding out where you're lacking and trying to improve on those performance.
Setting a standard of performance, trying to match to that performance, and finding out reasons as to why you're not reaching there. So setting a standard is basically benchmarking, and you can set the standard on your own based on past performance, can set the standard on the basis of how the competition is performing, or according to the best in class, best in the industry. These are mainly the three types of benchmarking that any company can undertake.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Ma'am, the best in class, what exactly is it?
Let me give you an example here. Let's say, so I am a pizza making company. So let's say I am Domino's, right? And my major occupation is making and selling pizzas, right? Now, I also deliver pizzas to people's places, to people's home. And I want to set a benchmark on the delivery time. That is, I want to set a standard that, you know, my delivery time should not exceed so many minutes or whatever. Now I check the market, I check the delivery industry, and I see that Swiggy is doing the best job at delivering food at the earliest. So let's say if Swiggy's average delivery time is 20 minutes and I set 20 minutes as my benchmark of delivery time, that becomes a best in class benchmarking. It won't be competitive benchmarking because Swiggy and Domino's are not competitors. If Swiggy and Zomato, if Zomato was setting a benchmark based on what Swiggy is doing, that would be competitive benchmarking. But here they are not competitors. Your Domino's has picked up the benchmark that was the best in that particular industry. So that becomes a best in class benchmarking. Darren,
So basically it is you're choosing a similar process or activity from another company which is not in your industry.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys, this is it with the revision. Going to jump into the questions now. I think I want to take up one full question paper with you guys so that we know exactly how to, okay, there's one more question. It can be activity-based also, Priyanka. If you are benchmarking a particular activity, it can be activity-based also. It depends on what you are benchmarking. But activity benchmarking can also be under competitive. No, if I'm setting my activity, if I'm setting the benchmark according to a competitor, then it becomes a competitive benchmarking as well. So you can't really standardize that. You can't say that that is the rule. Right? Okay, I want to do one full question paper with you so that we firstly take an overall view of the syllabus. We are not just, if I pick up questions from the exam kit, we'll be focusing on specific areas, which I don't want to do, which I will leave up to you to practice. But yeah, taking one full question paper will help us understand how exactly we are going to go about that question paper in the exam as well. And I thought the best one would be to, okay. Saeed is asking, where can we find all the past papers? No, they are not only 4. On the website, there are a lot of question papers, lot of past papers. Are there only 4 past papers on the website?
3 specimen papers are also there.
Nimisha is saying 9 at least are there. Please check, and if you're able to do those 9 also, it's amazing. That much is more than enough.
The case study questions, the 100-mark case studies questions in the exam kit are also treated as question papers, right? The 6 questions which you have in our Kaplan exam kit. Which...
Yeah, those are your specimen exams. Okay, and even after that, if you fall short of question papers, please let me know. I'll supply. I will be able to give you lots of them. Don't have to worry about question papers at all. Just keep solving. Okay, so I am going to share the question paper with you guys. So let me tell you how we are going to proceed with one question paper. Sure, Nimish, I'll do that. Okay. Now, how we are going to go about this question paper is, so I've picked up the same question paper for which we did the marking insight. Remember in the first or the second class?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So why I have picked that up is because I don't know if I give you the question paper to solve, whether you'll actually solve and then look at the insight or not. So I thought I will do one, comprehensive question paper where we have done the question paper and we've done the marking insight also. So you get an overall view. So that is my aim. So that is the reason I've picked up the same question paper for which we did the marking insight, the Dave Dean one, right? So how we are going to proceed about it is, I'm just going to show you the question paper right away. We will together read the introduction and the requirements first. Right, and requirements also, I think we'll just read the first requirement because of the shortage of time, right? Because if we start reading all the requirements, then we will not be able to solve a single question today. Want to solve at least one question today. So we will read the first requirement and then we try and link that to the exhibits. Like I told you in the beginning, you read the requirement and you annotate which exhibit will that particular requirement relate to. And then we go on to that particular exhibit and we try and solve at least one question today. Then you take that question paper for homework. You read all the remaining 4 questions along with all the exhibits that are there. And tomorrow we directly start off with discussing the remaining 4 questions. I'm not going to give you any time to read it, right? You have to understand that it's a 10-hour revision lecture in which we are trying to cover as much as we can. So we cannot be wasting any reading time in the class. So you have to make that effort of reading it at home so that we spend the maximum time in discussing. And trust me, when you discuss, you will get a fair idea about how to solve those questions. Okay. And, a fair idea about what points are valid, what points will get you the 2 marks that we spoke about, and which points are completely irrelevant and you should avoid answering. And the best way to do it is that when you go home, you are at home, but when you start reading the questions, you start writing the pointers that you would want to write in that particular answer. And tomorrow you have to discuss those points with me. And I will exactly give you logic and reason as to why a particular option or a particular point is valid and why a particular point will not fetch you any marks. If you go through this activity with me, if you actually dedicatedly do this with me, you will actually gain a lot out of this. This will really help you with your exams, right? So yes, Darren, I will forward that on the Google Drive. Do you want me to copy it right away?
Are we going to discuss it now, ma'am?
Yes, we're going to discuss it now.
Okay, after the class.
It's 2018, Isha. It's a mock paper. Right? So quickly, guys, want you all to read the introduction and the exhibit lines quickly. Let me know when you're done. All right, guys, done reading?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Going to read the first requirement, and you have to tell me if you can annotate or link it to any of the exhibits that you just read. Like, oh, the problem is that the exhibit numbers are given here. In the exam, please do not expect this. The exhibit numbers won't be given to you.
this question is actually giving a hint on what is to be done.
That is how it's going to be in the exam also. You will pick up from the question as to what is to be done. The only difference is you will not have the exhibit numbers as given, like as they are given here. Apart from this, it is a standard exam type question. The requirements will obviously tell you what is to be done. Isha, this is a mock paper. It's not 2018 actual paper. Yeah, I will share it right after the class. Anyway, you have to read the entire question paper and come up with the answers. I'll be pasting it in the drive. Yeah, Sai, just that, but using appropriate models and using appropriate text from the case. Okay, so this question basically talks about the potential acquisition of FRG and recommend whether machine shop should acquire FRG or not. So where do we have information about FRG? It's in Exhibit 6 that we have the information about FRG, right? So we are going to go to Exhibit 6. Please read this. Okay, and tell me, is it legible if I'm zooming out?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So yeah, basically what do you have to do in this requirement? Firstly, when you're reading about the requirement, you should exactly fixate it in your head as to what you're going to do about it. You're going to think about the models that you can use in a particular type of question, right? And how exactly are you going to go about it? So once you read this exhibit, you're going to start planning your answer. And you're going to share the plan with me first that, okay, I'll be using this model, I'll be talking about all this, and then we talk into the details of, whether it is advisable that they acquire or not. Okay, so giving you some time, please read the Exhibit 6 quickly and tell me when you're done with this. I'll scroll down.
Usually during an exam, after we read all the requirements and make a mental note of it, we have to go back and read all the exhibits and then finally assign the exhibits to the requirement, right?
Yeah, you can do it simultaneously also. While you have read the requirement and you read the exhibit headings, 60 to 70% of the requirements, you will be able to link it to the exhibits in the first shot only, when you have read the title of the exhibits and when you have read the requirements. There'll be some that you will not be able to link. That you can do as and when you read the exhibits.
Okay.
Right? And also while reading the exhibits, you might find that, oh, requirement 1, it relates to Exhibit 6, that is fine. But, even I can pick up some data from, let's say, Exhibit 4 also for this particular answer. So that you will come to know when you start reading the exhibits. And if you feel that, you can then add that exhibit also to that particular requirement. Now see, here we have read about FRG, right? Now, if you are looking at acquiring a particular company, you first read about, okay, like we first read about FRG, whatever their information has been given. But in order to see whether it will be a good acquisition prospect for us or not, we also need to read about where we are. What are our objectives? Where are we looking to go? Right? And whether that is matching with our potential acquisition or not. Right? This is common sense that you have to apply. You have to look at the target and you have to look at where we are. And hence, after that, you will decide. Yes, Darren is saying, I think I need to know more about Machine Shop. Exactly. You need to know more about Machine Shop. Which exhibit is telling you more about the company? This is about Machine Shop, right? So you can read this one also. It's a small exhibit. Quickly read this one. Yes, good point, Isha. Guys, do you think you want to read any other exhibit before you start answering this question? Actually, see, you are not going to face this problem in the exam because you are going to read all the exhibits before you even start with the first answer, right? We are only doing this to save time because if we don't solve this, then you'll take up the entire time to read this, right? So just factor that in for now.
It would be like better if you actually know our financial structure, and if we acquire the organization, how would it have effect on our financial structure as well and our current performance compared to their performance.
So this is the financial information for Machine Shop that you want. Yes, Kevin, we will need FRG's financial reports also. Syed, absolutely, yes.
So, ma'am, what did you say just now, some time back?
And what exactly did you miss out? I mean, could you give me a...
Ma'am, actually, one of them was telling something and you said, yes, it is like this. I did not get that.
He asked a question. He actually mentioned a point that Machine Shop's mission is giving more priority to homeowners, while FRG is only selling product to trade customers. So he
Okay, ma'am.
mentioned a point. So I said, yeah, that's true. You can, Isha, you can apply that. Okay, any other model that you guys, any other exhibit that you think you need to answer this question?
In the exhibit 4, they have actually, like about the board meetings, they actually supported the acquisition. So they would have their own reasoning why they supported the acquisition. So we can actually question that reasoning for earning professional marks.
It's a long one. Actually, you know, I thought this will work, but to be able to give a comprehensive answer to the first question also, you will need good enough knowledge from all the different exhibits. So, you know what, we are going to take it properly only then. We are actually going to pick it up like we would in the exam point of view, in the exam scenario only. And let's not, I was trying to pick and choose that, okay, maybe we can solve the first question using so-and-so exhibits, but that is clearly not working. That was to save time, but let's not do that, right? Now, I'm straight away giving you what you are supposed to do in this paper, how you are supposed to approach this paper, and what is my expectation from you before you come into the class tomorrow, right? So first, you read the introduction of the company and you read this. Then you go on to the requirement, right? So, okay, so only in the first requirement, they have mentioned the exhibit, okay? Later on, they have not mentioned the exhibits. So what you have to do is you read the requirement and you write the exhibit number that you think will give answers to this particular requirement. So that you annotate. Here they have already given, but you know, in the questions to come, no detail of the exhibit has been mentioned. So in the first round, this is how you are approaching the paper in the final exam also. So pay full attention. In the first round, you will annotate the exhibit numbers and freeze these questions, like try to feed your mind that this is what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the particular exhibit. Right? You annotate. There can be multiple. It's not always a one-on-one link. One question can be linked to multiple exhibits. Okay, so you link that. Write the exhibits numbers here, right? Now, there are so many questions. So when you are eventually going to the first exhibit, before going to the first exhibit, just read the questions for the ones that you've written exhibit 1. Okay, so for whatever questions you've written exhibit 1, just read those questions again so that you have a fair idea of what you're looking at. And then you go on to reading exhibit 1 and so on for the remaining questions as well, right? So, and then you go on, read the entire question paper till exhibit 6. After that, you start planning your answer. So like I got a few responses in the first, this one. See, whenever I see a question about evaluating 2 different strategies or evaluating whether I should acquire a company or not, I'm always going to go ahead with the SAF model, right? So after reading the question, you kind of decide which model you want to use, right? And then you go ahead and use that model and do the analysis. So what I'm expecting from you guys is for each of the questions, I want the bullet points that, you would, the models that firstly you would use, and the bullet points that you're going to put in as your answers. If you do this activity, tomorrow when we discuss, you can come up with your points. Whichever ones are relevant, go to your final answer. And whichever ones that we discuss are irrelevant, why it cannot form a part of your answer, you will be able to learn a lot. But if you don't do this question paper, then it will be a futile exercise, because then it will just be me telling you the answers, which we cannot do at this point in time, right? So I'm copying this question paper straight away into the Google Drive and download it and start working on it. And tomorrow we straight off jump into the discussion. Is that okay? Perfect. Great to know, Ramakrishnan. Great. I'll put it up on the Google Drive. Please download it from there. That's it for the day, guys. If you have any questions, you can stay back. Otherwise, just access the Google Drive in about 5 to 10 minutes. It will be there, this question paper.
Ma'am, relating to the actual time management in the question, once we actually get the question paper, how do you actually manage like this 2.5 minutes? Like, do we like directly look at the watch every time we write? Like, how do you first you have to write like 2.5 into the requirements ka time? Or do we first read the entire questions, case study, requirement, and finally look at how much time we have left remaining? And then we have to do a calculation, how much minutes we have, and then you have to assign that based upon the marks. How does the actual time management actually happens, and how does it actually work out?
Firstly, you cannot be doing this calculation in the exam hall that, oh, this much time is left, this many marks. This cannot be happening there. This is a part of your planning. This has to happen before you enter the exam hall. So the first 40 minutes, at best 60 minutes, you are going to give to reading the entire question paper that includes all the exhibits, all the requirements. So if you practice at least 4 to 5 papers now, you will get into the practice of reading the entire paper in 40 minutes. So today, when you're reading the paper, keep a watch on the time. See how much time you're taking to read the paper. And there should be a balance. Sometimes you are just in a hurry to read the paper that you're not retaining the required information. So it should be a balance. You should be able to retain the information also, at the same time, read quickly also. So, it has to come with practice, that you finish reading in 40 to 60 minutes. And then whatever time is left, briefly, there are going to be 5 to 6 requirements in the question. So you just briefly after that. So if I have, let's say 200 minutes left, right? So when I divide that 200 by 5 requirements, I have basically 40 minutes per requirement. So that is how I'm going to just basically prima facie divide the time into the different requirements and go into the depth of the answer. But I don't want you to calculate the time that is left and then mark per minute. That calculation has to happen before, not then.
Okay, ma'am. So basically, as long as you have an average idea of the time which you're going to give each question equally in mind, then you can go with that. There's no need to take a calculator, sit down and think about the minutes and time you're going to spend to each question and so on, right? Once you're completely okay with the 1 hour or 40 minutes, rest of the time you divide it equally among the requirements which you have, and then give equal time or importance for the requirements which you deem necessary, so that everything will get answered. So that is okay, right?
Exactly. But obviously, take note of the marks also. If let's say one requirement is only 10 marks and another is 20 marks, it should be, absolutely normal for you to focus more on the 20 marks. Maybe give 10-20 minutes extra to that, and that way. But I don't want you to kind of calculate that, oh, I will take 21 minutes for this requirement. That creates unnecessary pressure, and that is absolutely not needed.
Understood, ma'am. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you so much.
But when you're reading, please make sure that you are keeping a watch on, keeping a note of the time that you're taking to read, because sometimes we get carried away and we need to consciously make that effort of looking at the clock. And that is the reason, guys, I'm telling you to solve question papers, because if you don't do it, then in the exam, it just creates a lot of tension. After 20 minutes, if let's say you have just, managed to read the requirements, and if you're on the first exhibit, it's going to create a lot of tension at that point in time. But if you are used to reading a question paper, if let's say you have read at least 5 to 6 question papers before you enter the exam hall, you will more or less know your pace of reading. So you will know that after 20 minutes, I'm usually on the second exhibit more or less, because it's kind of the length remains the same. So I'm usually there. So in the exam hall also, if you're working at the same pace, you will remain relatively more confident. And if you do not know where to go, like if you have not practiced before, then you'll see, oh, ma'am said 40 minutes, 20 minutes are already over and I'm not even done with the first exhibit. It's just going to create a lot of tension. So make sure you're practicing. Yes, you're supposed to read all questions at once. Yes, Darren, that does happen, but eventually all question papers, the question paper that you're going is going to be manageable. It is going to be thought through that whether a student will be able to, attempt that in 4 hours or not. So do not worry about that. I have just uploaded the paper, guys. Check. Check if you're able to access. I've put it up. I'll put the Drive link again if you want.
Yes, ma'am, received it.
Perfect. Okay. Said is asking very general question, ma'am. Will the examiner be very strict? I asked this because if there exists any case where network gets fluctuated or the network get disconnected, do we have a chance? Yeah. Should not be a problem. The technical aspect of it is taken care of. There are obviously some, like there have been students who have had to give the paper again, but make sure that when you're sitting for the paper, there's stable internet. Try to connect to a LAN instead of the Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi, I feel in 4 hours, it does fluctuate. So if you have a stable LAN, if you don't have it, please order a LAN and connect it to your router so that you do not face the technical problems like that. Ramakrishnan, thank you so much for your kind words. And I'm glad it's helping. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good day.